Welcome one and all to another episode of The Damage Report on the day when the January 6 hearings return. I will be covering that later on, but we've got a lot to focus on this show, and thankfully we come equipped with contributor Rebel HQ, Jackson White. Welcome back to the show.
Man, what's going on? It's always good to be here with you. And like we was talking about before, I think we're gonna have a bit of a fun day for sure.
Yeah, it's we got some important stuff to talk about, but I would classify the show mostly as just fun stuff to talk about. We're gonna lighten up a little bit. In a couple of hours, we're gonna be diving into, the plot to overthrow democracy. So it's gonna get serious and everything. But can we have a little bit of fun, America?
We have to.
Is that allowed?
We have to.
We're gonna be talking about scandals and billion-dollar fines and a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about the incel today.
Maybe we can weave it into some interesting context around that, just in terms of online spaces, and echo chambers, and things like that.
But I apologize. You know what? Maybe during one of the social breaks, we can dive into it a little bit.
Okay, maybe perhaps.
I want to hear your thoughts.
All right.
But we're going to be talking about Christopher Columbus and Herschel Walker's ancestry. Is John Fetterman a robot? Tucker Carlson is just asking questions. So we've got that and a lot more coming up on the show, in the full show, the aftermath and all that. In advance of that though, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great. And you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Jackson, are you ready to start the show?
Yes, sir, let's do it.
Let's do it, okay. Bit of bad news for Donald Trump when it comes to the document scandal at Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ apparently has an employee of his who has been working with them and revealing some bombshells, including the main one, which is that he told federal agents, he or she, we don't know, probably he, that Donald Trump told him to move boxes of documents at Mar-a-Lago. Specifically, it was Donald Trump that said that. And specifically, this came after multiple rounds of the National Archives and other related bodies trying to get back the classified documents. So in response to that, he specifically told his employees to move documents to his residence to try to hide them away. You cannot claim that you're not breaking the law when you're specifically trying to cover up the evidence that you're breaking the law. But let's give you all of what we know at this point. So told federal agents about this. This is direct from the employee. The employee is cooperating with the Justice Department, has been interviewed multiple times already by federal agents. And people familiar with the ongoing investigation say that agents have gathered witness accounts indicating that after Trump advisors received a subpoena back in May for any classified documents that remained at Mar-a-Lago, Trump told people, you gotta get the boxes out of there. You gotta get them somewhere that they won't be able to find them. And apparently it isn't just the multiple witnesses saying that. They have security camera footage showing people moving the boxes. That's according to these sources. Now, what's interesting is that this main witness that's driving so much of this news coverage today initially denied handling sensitive documents or the boxes that might contain such documents. But as the investigation gathered more evidence, they decided to re-interview this witness. And once they presented the evidence they had, the witness was like, oh, you said classified. I thought you said grassified. Oh no, I did handle classified documents. Suddenly the story changed, and that's when they admitted that they had been moving these boxes. And what is even more damning is that that's that one main person, but there are apparently multiple people working with the DOJ. Multiple witnesses have already told the FBI that they tried to talk Trump into cooperating with the NARA investigation and the DOJ, but he just wasn't having it. Like they would not listen to his attempts to get him to comply with the law. And he apparently in particular grew angry this spring after a House Oversight Committee investigation was launched, telling aides they'd screwed up the situation. They're my documents, Trump said, according to an aide who spoke with him. And I don't know, is the aide one of the witnesses that they're already talking about? Is it that main employee? Are there 15 different people working with the DOJ? I don't know, but what seems to be the case, both with Christina Bobb, Trump lawyer, who we've been talking about for the last week or so, and then this person is, these are not Stephanie Grishams or whatever. These are not people who are like looking to stick it to Trump. They initially defended him. But then once you start presenting evidence that they've now implicated themselves, or they might be implicated in breaking the law, then suddenly they're kind of forced to work against Donald Trump. And that's the position that he put them in. Jackson, what do you think?
So, hindsight is such an interesting thing because Trump is like, basically a giant goiter on the forehead of the GOP. And even Lindsey Graham himself said if we embrace him fully, he's going to end up destroying us. But at the same time, I don't really see how he was avoidable because Obama stirred up the country in such a way that led to the possibility of Trump. And now Trump, he's so toxic, and yet Ron DeSantis isn't quite ready to replace him. It's like the Republicans need to gear somebody else up. Politically, they just have to, and they know it. But they can't, and they're dealing with a guy who basically his lifelong history of criminality and just being a scandalous, low-life person is catching up to him. The literally over $1 billion that he owes to people, him just having people work themselves out of business because he doesn't pay them, all the lawsuits against him from New York. Now he's gonna have to go and sit in when what's her name, E. Jean Carroll, the columnist. He has to go in for deposition and testify under oath. And he's just becoming such an issue that really, from my perspective, I don't really see him being able to beat anybody in a general election, especially when you have a Biden administration that, while we would have liked to see him go further on many things, is delivering, versus a Republican Party that's running 1,000,000 miles an hour in the wrong direction. So it's like they have to replace him, but with who?
I hope you're right.
I hope so too. We'll see. I hope so too.
Let's also, I'm going to add on to that the Republican strategy, if they are to take over the midterms, is not to pass anything, which would be difficult anyway with Biden as president. It's to just make everything as bad as possible, because the idea then is that Biden will look bad or whatever other Democrat will look bad. The Democrats will look bad. But the issue is that right now, when things get bad, they can say, well, we have no control over it, which isn't 100% true, but it's partially true. But they're going to be in control. Like, I know that they won't be in the White House, but they will be in control. It's a dangerous strategy. And I'm glad, by the way, that you mentioned E. Jean Carroll. I saw that Trump was bleeding about it on Truth Social.
I didn't get to catch up with that. I'm glad that you about to, yeah.
So he had a long post about her, referring to her. He wouldn't say her name initially. He just called her the name of the place she alleges he raped her. And then he says, and I cannot believe, no, why can't I believe this? Why at this point can I believe this? That he
right,
says,
John, come on, John.
I know I'm not supposed to say this, but she's not my type. So he has an advisor who is willing to risk his wrath to tell him, okay, buddy, it looks really bad when you say the reason I didn't rape someone was I wasn't turned on enough by them, and yet he's still gonna say it again. But anyway, that's a separate scandal. We'll return to that, I'm sure. I just want to mention one other thing when it comes to this document scandal, because the evidence has been evolving, and that's been fascinating, but the explanations have also been evolving, and that's maybe even more fascinating. So I want you to take a look at the statement from Taylor Budowich, Trump's spokesperson, about these new allegations, which of course make them look absolutely terrible. So the first part is fairly boilerplate. The Biden administration has weaponized law enforcement and fabricated a document hoax in a desperate attempt to retain political power. He's not making any specific claims there. It's very vague, whatever. But then he goes on to say, every other president has been given time and deference regarding the administration of documents, as the president has the ultimate authority to categorize records and what materials should be classified. Do you see what he's doing there? Like, maybe it's not clear, maybe it's clear, I don't know. So they were implying for a long time that these documents could be classified. And then everyone and their mother was like, so did you declassify them? And they refused to say. Now they're saying, hey, don't be mean to us. We get to have them for a couple of years before deciding whether they should be classified. That is a fairly explicit retreat from their previous defense. Not only are they not making specific claims that they declassified, but they're trying to set up this weird situation where they don't even have to decide whether to declassify them for literally years, even though notably ex-presidents can't classify or declassify literally anything. And so that I haven't seen many people focusing on that statement, but that seems like a pretty big retreat on one of their core, if hypothetical, defenses.
So it's just incredible how stupid Trump is. That's just how I'm gonna close this out, because you just a simple phrase that you said coming into this. He said, "They're my documents." That's how he and the entire GOP sees the world. And it's just I know we didn't specifically cover the E.Jean Carroll here, but I know I'm not supposed to say this. If she was hotter, then maybe we'd be talking about something. I mean, you look at her, it's just. But again, it's like you said. Hopefully this doesn't. No, I'm not even gonna say hopefully. We got to beat these people, man. We got to beat these people.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and look, we can't say for sure exactly what happened with E.Jean Carroll. It certainly doesn't sound good, and it becomes a little bit easier to take her word on it when her word are words that are surrounded by the words of dozens of other women who have made similar claims about sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, all sorts of different things.
Yeah, for me, it's just on top of that. For me, it's just ultimately all of this stuff piling on. It can't help him at this point. It just can't. And I think that there's just a lot of room for especially progressives, younger generations, to continue to have little wins that do count, especially at a smaller, more local level. But even in the elections coming ahead, because that big red wave, just because of the series of events that have happened, I'm not convinced.
It's
about
blunted
that at
it.
all. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it has blunted it. I still worry about them taking over potentially both houses, but we'll see. But I do want to give people a little bit of a preview of what's going to be going on with the January 6th hearing. So why don't we jump into that? It is actually no. Wow, look at is that Craig? Is that Skip? Is that Mark? You were so quick on the trigger there. I like it. It has been actually a couple of months since the last round of January 6 hearings. I know it felt like it was just yesterday, but it was back in July. And a lot has happened since then. I mean, at that point, we didn't know anything about the document scandals and all that. Things develop quickly. And there's reason to believe that they might be developing when it comes to this investigation as well. Although I would temper your expectations for really explosive testimony. That's what I would say. There might well be interesting evidence presented today, but you should understand that there's going to be some limitations in comparison to past hearings. But let's dive into what we know currently about what we can expect. The focus thematically is going to be on the president's state of mind and his involvement in these events as they unfolded. So his involvement in the events, that's of course important. We want to know exactly what he did, what he didn't do, what the timeline was. But I actually find that line about his state of mind to be pretty fascinating, because there's currently no plans to have Donald Trump testify. So bear that in mind. So how exactly are they going to get to his state of mind other than through talking with people who were around him on January 6th? I guess telepathy is a possibility, but outside of telepathy, only talking with people who were with him on that day would be able to provide that information. And so hopefully we will get some of that. Now they say there aren't going to be any live witnesses at today's hearing, but there would be video testimony and documentary evidence that hasn't been seen before. I am assuming that video testimony is pre-recorded. I assume that when they say live, they don't just mean in person. This must be stuff that they've been doing through the last few months. And bear in mind, there could be new evidence coming from witnesses that will not be live, but will still be relevant. For instance, cabinet secretaries like Mike Pompeo, Steve Mnuchin, Elaine Chao, referred to recently by the former most powerful person in the world as Coco Chao. Jesus, hopefully she's been a little bit more willing to cooperate following that ridiculous racist attack. And anyway, they do say that since the last set of hearings, they've received more than 1 million communications from the Secret Service from the lead up to the riot, as well as new material, new emails, and new video that has been handed over. And so it's not necessarily gonna be live. There's not gonna be any live gotchas to totally change things up, but there could be video. There's been non-live video that's really significant in the past, including Josh Hawley booking it through the hallway to get away before fist bumping or whatever. And so I don't know exactly what to expect. I am hoping that they have some people that were very close to Donald Trump on that day that can provide a little bit of information about his state of mind. But Jackson, what do you think?
Yeah, hopefully so, because again, like you said, it's not like he's going to testify, because that would be the biggest disaster in history. But I think that what's really interesting is that despite the seriousness of January 6th, despite people literally running into the heart of the nation, and despite the fact that we're covering this here, and it's not like this is overlooked, it's kind of like an type of issue. You know what I mean? Like people going into the elections, I don't really see this impacting them that much. Now, not to say that this doesn't add to, that giant pile that Trump is dealing with in terms of his toxic baggage. However, people going into the midterms and the 2024 election, they're going to be thinking about the economy, inflation. Saudi Arabia just did what they did with gas prices, and that's really what the Democrats are going to have to address. Although obviously we want to see accountability on this end, this is not something I believe that the Democrats should really zero in on too much in terms of how they want to take office going forward.
Yeah, I suppose. And look, I've said all along that the longer these things get dragged out, the more difficult it is for people to understand or perhaps remember why it was so significant. I mean, the issue is that Donald Trump wanted a mob to kill Mike Pence and overthrow the results of an election, which now we're a year and a half away from. So it seems less significant, but the issue is that he's not any less likely to inspire another riot in the future, unfortunately. Although I would say the part of it that I'm more immediately worried about is another level removed from the sort of thing that you're saying, which would be, remember, they already got people into a whole bunch of positions of power in state elections boards, state secretaries of state. They're continuing to do that. They've already changed the voting laws in a number of states. All of that is baked in at this point. And there's no big investigations, there's no big testimony. It already happened. They've already done this. When we talk about the results of the midterms, remember, they already did a whole bunch of their insane partisan redistricting. That's already baked in to what the distribution of power in the House of Representatives is going to be in a couple of months. And this is how it works. They do insane radical things, and unless people freak out immediately, you can get used to literally anything. It is now harder to vote in multiple states, particularly in the South, than it was. And we just have to accept that now. Nobody, there's no big freaking out about it. It's just gonna be harder. It's gonna affect the midterms. It's gonna affect 2024. It's fun. It's really fun living in America when such terrible things can be normalized on such a routine basis.
Yeah, and I think that really just goes to show the impact of culture, because when unions were stronger, when the working class was stronger in this country, the culture was different in terms of people going to bat and where the power was in organization. And now, we're just kind of used to the government being corrupted. We're just kind of used to things happening. So much is piled up. The role reversal, that's so big. And then too, just, us being so oversaturated with so much content of all kinds, all the time. And then Donald Trump as president, really opening up Pandora's box to, at least in this political era, things like decorum and being cordial just really don't matter as much as they would. So, it's just the times that we're in right now.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, Alex Jones had to face the results of another one of his many trials that he's embroiled in, and we're gonna give you his response after this. Okay, everybody, let's jump back into some news. Alex Jones already owes tens of millions of dollars to the families that have suffered for years because of his intentional lying for profit about what happened at Sandy Hook. But that turns out to be nothing in comparison to what he now owes. Take a look at him in real time responding to the judgment.
To plaintiff Robbie Parker, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $60 million.
Yeah.
B, emotional distress damages past and future, total $120 million.
Yeah.
Ruled by juror number 1.
Yeah.
To plaintiff David Wheeler, A, $30 million.
Yeah.
Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff, $55 million.
Yeah.
Initials.
Never said their name, don't know who they are.
He seems nice. So look, that's him having fun. He's a genuine lunatic. So what did you expect? He was going to take it seriously with some dignity or something? But admittedly, it is still a lot of money. Like, he can cheer in the moment, but $1 billion so far is gonna hurt. I haven't run the numbers on exactly how many jars of powdered gorilla bone you need to sell, or how many Instahard pills you need to hock before you can pay for $1 billion, but it's gonna be a few of them. And he did at some point seem to understand the financial pressure he's gonna be under, saying, this must be what hell's like. They just read out the damages even though you don't got the money. Well, look, do I think he has $1 billion? No, I do not believe that he has $1 billion. Does he have many millions of dollars? Yes, unfortunately, he has many millions of dollars that he has gotten by doing things like defaming the families of the survivors of mass shootings. And he's got a private jet, and look, he has money that he is going to have to part with. He doesn't want to. He plans to appeal the verdict. He also suggested, by the way, that he may not pay anyway, even without an appeal. Do these people actually think they're getting any of this money? He also warned that being sued would not stop him from spreading conspiracy theories. They want to scare us away from questioning Uvalde or Parkland. We're not going away. We're not going to stop. So just, in case you were wondering if all of his legal travails of the last few years have gotten him to take this a little bit more seriously, or if you believe that he just okay, he said it and it was wrong, but it was just his free speech, it's not that bad. Even after $1 billion in judgment, he is still spreading lies about mass shootings. He's doing it to keep his audience so he can sell them dick pills so he can stay a millionaire. Let's be very clear about every step of this process. He already owed $45 million. And by the way, there's another trial coming up later this year in Texas that could put it well past 1 billion. Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I think it's fascinating in a few ways. And what I mean is, I think Alex Jones it just shows the power of tapping into stimulus of the lizard brain, basically. Being charismatic, being loud, being boisterous, being entertaining, especially in modern day America, such that even though I remember the very first time that I came across Alex Jones, he had on a lizard mask or a horse mask of some kind. But again, just like it's entertaining. And again, obviously he did horrible things with it, but I'm saying that to really point to how he made his money. He's just entertaining. That's all it is. And unfortunately, he caused a lot of damage with his ability to greatly entertain people. Now, I don't think that he has $1 billion either. However, this is definitely a giant middle finger to InfoWars, everything that it stands for. This definitely is, he's not just going to be able to not pay any of that money whatsoever. On top of the fact that, as you pointed out, Alex Jones is nuts, and he's not he's crazy, and he's not taking this well. I mean, who would take being issued $1 billion fine well for something like this? The most avoidable thing in history. It's not like he was like, oh, I woke up and I stubbed my toe and then all of this happened. Like, he did this for years. He tripled down for years. So, it's just, the reality is that Alex Jones deserves this. And he's not going to help himself as time continues to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the most important thing you said is that he knew. It wasn't that he just did it. He knew and he kept doing it. And I want to transition now to that, about the severity and extent of this. I know some people are probably very familiar with the ins and outs of this going back literally years. Others probably are not. So let's talk about that. But we're going to frame it around responding to a different sort of bad actor who also has a history of spreading conspiratorial nonsense. Marjorie Greene, of course, is going to defend Alex Jones, facing this massive $1 billion fine. But take a look at how she chooses to defend him. She says, no matter what you think of Alex Jones, all he did was speak words. He was not the one who pulled the trigger. Were his words wrong? And did he apologize? Yes. Well, half yes, to be clear. That's what freedom of speech is. Freedom to speak words. Political persecution must end. So there's a lot that's conflated. And of course, there's gonna be her mind is Swiss cheese with the holes being drilled on a daily basis by a variety of different sorts of worms. That's the best that she can do, but we're gonna try to break it down and respond to it. Did he pull the trigger? No, he of course did not pull the trigger. But to be clear, he doesn't think that anyone pulled the trigger. Can we be clear about that? He thinks it was made up. He thinks these kids literally didn't exist. So if you're gonna defend him, at least be specific about what exact speech you're defending, Marjorie Greene. You don't wanna be though, you're cowardly. You want to be very vague about it because you don't wanna implicate yourself, particularly when you have repeatedly implied that mass shootings and other forms of mass violence are false flags, that they don't actually exist. But does he have freedom of speech? Yes, he does. Does freedom of speech mean whatever Marjorie Greene wants it to? No, it has specific meanings and specific limitations. Defamation is one of those limitations, particularly when the defamation can be very reliably, predictably linked to harassment and threats against those people. And when you repeatedly do it multiple times after being warned about the effect of what you're doing. And bear in mind, she tries to apologize for all this, saying he apologized, which he technically briefly did. But if you buy that apology, you're probably a viewer of Alex Jones, because he has repeatedly since then said that he doesn't believe that the shooting was real. One of the survivors of this, or I believe a family member survivor, responded to Marjorie Greene saying, did you also miss him doubling down, saying that the shooting looked synthetic as we were in court for this trial? No, she ignores that. Of course she ignores that. She doesn't care that, as Ruben Gallego points out, defamation is very much not protected speech. And just to be clear, one might expect her to understand that the defamation part of this when she has repeatedly threatened to sue people for things they said about her. She tweeted right here, defamation of character is a serious issue. Perhaps if Democrats keep lying about Republicans like Representative Loudermilk and others, they should be taken to court. Well, why should they be taken to court? They didn't pull a trigger, Marjorie Greene. They only said words, and that's freedom of speech. No, of course she understands. She wants freedom of speech for her and for people like Alex Jones to say literally anything they want for personal profit, even if it causes mass predictable suffering. And then when they get criticized, they want to immediately run to the courts, or at least imply that they're going to. Like Herschel Walker with the abortion allegations, they will often say that they're gonna bring someone to court, but they very much don't want the process of discovery in a courtroom to make them look even worse, so they don't often actually do it. But Jackson, what do you think?
So, you really just nailed it on the head in terms of, for me, but not for thee. But just how hollow and in your face it really is, whether it be defending Alex Jones or people like, for anyone who's familiar with like the Andrew Tates of the world who get deplatformed, or, just their fight is so hollow and so stupid. My right to say destructive things that literally lead to other people being harmed and being hurt, which of course is not something that's legally protected whatsoever. When platforms like Twitter, which are businesses that have audiences and they have responsibilities, when they decide to, maybe temporarily suspend somebody for, spreading false information that could impact people's health, and things along those lines. No, I have a right to do that. I have a right to be stupid, basically. And one of the things I've been saying across the networks for the last few weeks is just how, one of the strategies we really need to take is to just not treat these people like they're not serious, because they're not serious. Let's just roll over these people, because, how can you defend someone like Alex Jones? Really? Come on.
They're natural allies. Yeah. And again, just to put a button in this, and then we're gonna have to see if we can roll over her on a couple of other topics. If he had just said it once, it would be reprehensible, but maybe people could move on or whatever. That's not what he did.
Yeah.
He very repeatedly said it about this shooting, about other shootings, knowing about the harassment that was going on, and more importantly, knowing about the money he was making by pushing these lies. He didn't care about the incredible amount of suffering that he was doing. And that's what makes it a thing where, in theory, you can start to suffer legal ramifications.
It's a lie. Okay, yeah, climate changes. We already know that. But the agenda is a lie. And so the reason why they're fighting in this war in Ukraine, if you look at the areas where Russia has captured, It is so rich in rare earth minerals. It is. And those people openly say they want to be part of Russia.
Okay, so it might be one thing if Marjorie Greene were to say, I don't like what Putin and the Russians are doing. I think it's awful. The intentional murder of civilians is terrible, but I am so blindly anti-war that we will just allow it. Like, I don't want us to be involved, so we're not gonna be involved. And yes, that means that Ukraine will be conquered, not just the parts that wanna be Russian, as if that was some sort of settled topic, but all of it. After all, remember, they were trying to circle Kyiv in the first couple of weeks of the invasion. They wanna take over all of Ukraine. That's just a necessary part of us not being involved, so we're not gonna be involved. If she were to say that, that would be one thing. But she wants to have her supposed anti-imperialism and eat it too. Lying about the status of those territories, lying about the territorial ambitions of Russia, seeming to make the claim that because they're going in there for minerals, that makes it better. Something being a resource war doesn't make it more ethical. I don't even understand what point she's trying to make there. So she almost could have a point, but she, of course, muddies it and apologizes for the mass violence, the intentional killing and torture and rape of civilians. And then she wants to make it even more personal. So let's jump into this.
All about money. It is all about money. And it is a scam in so many ways. And you know what happens, guys? It's the government leaders, they don't suffer. Zelensky has a brand new green t-shirt on every single time you see him do an interview. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Does the man not wear any other color? Come on, we aren't stupid. We understand Hollywood. We're Americans, right? We understand movies and actors.
Okay, so do the political leaders often not suffer in the same way that regular people do? Yes, that's almost certainly true. It also doesn't bother her in the vast majority of cases. After all, I mean, she feels terrible for what happened to the regular insurrectionists on January 6th. She doesn't seem to have a problem with the fact that Donald Trump hightailed it back to his fancy apartment to just watch on TV the violence that he instigated. She seems fine with that. The fact that Donald Trump has a new made in China tie every time he appears doesn't seem to bother her. He's not suffering in the way that regular Americans are. But see, she really betrays herself there. Because again, it would be one thing to just say, I don't want war, so let's not be involved. Or Putin says he's gonna nuke them and I don't want nuclear war, so let's just give him whatever he wants. That would be one thing. But when she has to insult Zelensky's clothing choice, she is not just anti-war, she actively hates the Ukrainian resistance to their own subjugation. It's a personal thing to her. She doesn't just want you to not militarily support Zelensky, she wants you to disdain Zelensky. She wants you to hate Zelensky. And that is a very weird position to take. Jackson?
So I think, first and foremost, I'm sure the audience already knows, but Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't necessarily just say things randomly. She definitely, absolutely is a participant in these online communities where all of these same ideas are circulating. These types of ideas literally drive people to the polls. So she's not isolated in her saying these types of things. And then again, it's also, I have to point out, conservatives are always using things that are not based in reality to define reality. Like, oh, we know Hollywood, we've seen the movies, we know what they do on set because somebody has. What type of shirts is he supposed to have on? Like, is he supposed to come on TV like bruised and battered? Like, what are you talking about? But then, of course, Obama, when he had on, and there's plenty of legitimate things to criticize Obama about. But the tan suit, him using what was it, mustard on a burger or something like that. Yeah. But again, these aren't isolated comments and thoughts. These are things that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, definitely, if not millions of people, this is circulating people to the polls while they completely ignore everything that actually means something.
Yeah. She has so many followers.
Yeah.
People who look at her and think, not only is she right, but she's great. She's smart, she's wise. I mean, these are, how broken do you have to be? Anyway, let's jump into one more thing that she had to say.
But I always listen to, all these people and say, oh, I'm never, they take my guns, blah, 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 blah. No, you're not. You're not. Stop saying that. Just be real. You're not. Most people would hand them over, and that's the truth. And I hate to say it, but that's the truth. It's terrifying. The government is terrifying. Look at what's happening to these poor January 6 people. None of you want to be in there with them, do you? I know I don't.
Okay, so she hates to say it, that if certain guns were made illegal and the government was to come and try to get them, she hates to say that people would just turn them over. As opposed to what, Marjorie Greene? What's the alternative that you prefer because you hate the implication that they would just hand it over? This is why, like you might think that because they're profane and awful and racist and all that they're strong, like we conflate those things, but they're also incredibly cowardly. I have a challenge for Marjorie Greene. Tell me what you actually mean. Should they shoot the person who comes rather than hand it over? Should they be dragged away to jail? I mean, that might be one implication of what she means. The other would be that she should gun down the government official that comes. So specifically, who should they shoot? The ATF? The FBI? Is it a local cop? The National Guard? Who should these gun owners murder so that they don't have to hand over their guns? Specifically, how many of them should they murder? Should they shoot them in the chest? Should they shoot them in the head? You understand that they will eventually end up being either killed or brought in for murder. So I don't understand how that's supposed to be better for them, but be specific about the political violence that you'd like to have happen. If the law were to change, you believe that gun laws can never be more restrictive than they are right now. There's no legitimate way that any gun could ever be made illegal. What should be done? Should they be willing to kill 100 cops if they show up? Maybe blow up their cop cars. Where exactly should the line be drawn? She wants to make that implication that she would be stronger. You're weak, you'll hand in your guns. She would never hand in her guns. Okay, so what would you do with your gun if they were to come and get it? And of course, this is a massive dodge. There has never been anything like this. They're constantly talking about government agents coming to your house, either take your guns or stick you with a vaccine. It's a complete fantasy. It's like me talking about orcs marching on Cincinnati or something. It has as much grounding in reality, but this is the sort of stuff that they use to get their base to support them.
Yeah, and it's just the absurdity of, that we, the people, stand a chance against the mightiest military the world has ever seen in terms of technology and just how organized they are. Like what? Okay, like you said, we're gonna shoot them when they come to their door. Like it's like people don't realize that if the government was gonna come and take your guns or come after you, they don't even have to come shoot you. They could poison your water supply. They could shut off all of your credit cards and your bank accounts and literally lock you in your house. Anything electronic, they could just like they don't have to do that. Or if they were, they could just like plot some type of like, come kidnap you up out your sleep type of deal. They'll come in, like that's what you're dealing with. So the idea that it's like, come take it if you want to, like okay, or they could literally just nuke you, or it's so stupid.
Strike you.
Yeah, like okay, good luck with that. And then obviously, like she closed it out with the, those poor people on January 6th, because it should be your right to storm into the halls of the heart of the nation to defend Donald Trump, a former game show host who's a failed child, who's ripped everyone off his entire life. It's so saddening. But it's so stupid. It's just so stupid, man.
I agree. You make a great point. How about this? Maybe we can have some bipartisanship here, okay? Maybe Marjorie Greene and us, maybe we can come together. Since you want a future wherein some regular people with AR-15s can fight off the US military, how about we come together and stop giving the US military so much money? Because you realize that you're arming your future enemy in this case. You're giving them the drones and the tanks and all that stuff. How about this? How about let's cut their funding and then maybe you'll have a chance. Can we work together on that? Anyway.
Well, that's rational, so no, we can't.
Probably not, probably not.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna take our second break. When we come back though, Gary Chambers has another ad. And if you've seen his recent ones, it's gonna be fun. So we'll have that for you after this. Okay, everybody, let's jump into some more fun. Gary Chambers is not only a friend of the show, but also Senate candidate running in Louisiana. And throughout this race, he has had hit after hit when it comes to his ads. You remember when he went viral for smoking marijuana in a campaign ad? I don't think you're gonna forget that anytime soon. And by the way, totally proved right about the need to be a little bit more equitable on that topic, and Biden getting a bunch of credit now. So yes, he had that ad. That was followed up by an ad that actually showed a fictionalized version of a botched abortion, trying to give you an idea of what it's gonna look like in the future when Roe v. Wade is stripped away from more and more states, as well as, of course, him literally burning the Confederate flag in one of his ads. That was a personal favorite of mine. Well, now he's back to talk about Christopher Columbus and the substance-free, history-free adulation Christopher Columbus still gets. Take a look.
History repeats itself, especially when we lie about it.
And who's up next?
Me.
Come on up.
So it is wise for us to tell the truth.
My historical hero is Christopher Columbus.
Who do we allow our children to call their heroes?
In 1492, I set sail to find the continent of Asia. But instead, I stumbled upon a new land. Or so I thought.
If we tell them that a ruthless conqueror was a great explorer,
surprise! There are already people there. So I pretended to be their friend. Wink, wink.
that murderers were respected leaders,
I killed as many as I could with diseases that spread throughout the land.
and that thieves and enslavers were savvy businessmen.
Some I kept as servants. Others I sent to Europe as slaves. Well, at least the ones that survived.
Jeez, I always love Gary Chambers' performance in these ads, but that kid has a future because that was a great delivery there. And of course, as honest as all those details are and everything that was talked about in that ad did happen, that ain't the 10th part of the barbarous behavior that took place during that colonization. So Jackson, what do you think?
Well, I think that obviously he's very good at making ads, but one of the reasons he is because he tries to make people who stand for the, just the lied version of the history of America. He wants to make them angry as possible with it because of how he said it. You know what I'm saying, with the delivery, which is good because at the end of the day, like you said, that's really not a tenth of what happened because there was so much of a systemic process in how the entire eastern side of the world came over here. What happened to people, the tens of thousands of years of history that was here before that. And just, even if you don't want to talk about all that, like Christopher Columbus sailed over here with a boat full of rejects that society didn't want because it was like, oh, well, y'all might die trying to do this. So, go ahead and get on this boat. So that's the type of culture that they brought over. But I think one of the biggest key points with him and his effectiveness with ads, and I think he has a big future with it, is it's time to really shake these people up because it's like, what are you really mad about? Like,
yeah,
really? Like,
yeah, and they get mad. If you point out this stuff, they get mad. I tweet about it literally every year. They get so mad, and I don't understand it. If it makes you uncomfortable to know about the truth, take it up with the ghost of Christopher Columbus. Like, honestly, imagine if you found out that like an uncle of yours that you really like, 40 years ago, an employee of his said something you didn't like, so he cut off the employee's hands. That's your uncle. That's like someone you're more closely connected to, and it wasn't nearly as long ago. I feel like you'd still have to reevaluate your view of your uncle at that point, and that's just one person's hands, not tens of thousands, let alone the rape and the slavery and all that stuff. But for some reason, they feel more attached to a guy they've never met from 500 years ago and refuse to acknowledge the terrible things he did. By the way, bear in mind, they're perfectly willing to acknowledge the terrible things that other historic figures have done. Start a conversation about Genghis Khan with these people. They seem willing to talk about the barbarous behavior. And here's the thing, I bet Genghis Khan did some nice things from time to time, and yet we acknowledge the terrible mass murder and all that. It's so weird that they can't see that or refuse to see that they insist that if you did something that might be good, the consequences of it might be good, that anything else is allowed. We don't apply that to any people in the modern era, you'll know. So
well, it just
great job, like Garrett Chambers.
It hits home with the foundation of their identity, with their sense of identity. You know, because the idea that America is this place, because you have to think, what's one of the main things that conservatives criticize the left for? Basically wanting to improve society. You know, that's basically the crux of what their issue with the left is. And so, you know, when you point out the truth that this land was taken over basically through the more barbaric parts of our human nature, that shakes up that idea. That means that there is something to improve here. That means that these issues are real. That means that you are not special. And so all of that goes on at a subconscious level, because otherwise, again, it's just the truth. So that's all that's really going on. Their identity's just being shaken up.
That's what it is, and that gets them every time. Okay, we're gonna move on to our E-Block. We only have a few more minutes. Whenever you're ready, why don't we launch into this video?
I found something out. Then I'm gonna end. I found something out. Then I'm gonna end this. I found something out. My mom just told me that my grandmother was full-blood Cherokee. So I'm Native American. I was like, oh, hello. So I'm a super mutt. I don't know what I am. But this what was so funny. I said, Mom, why you never said anything to it?
Oh, I can answer that. Because it didn't happen and it's not true. That's why she didn't say anything about it. Does that help, Herschel Walker? That's why. It's not really funny though. It's weird. It's not the weirdest lie that you've told about yourself even recently. But it is one that even as he's telling it, surrounded by people who chose to go to a Herschel Walker rally. So, you know, their attachment to critical thinking and all that is a little bit tenuous. You'll notice they didn't cheer or anything. Like everyone in the crowd was like, why are you telling this to us? This seems really weird. Wait, don't we mock people that make these sorts of claims? And they are just claims, it's not true. The Cherokee Nation, the largest of 3 recognized tribes in the US, told HuffPost it had no record of Walker or anybody with this name in their database. Walker's mother, Christine, spoke to the Huffington Post and said she has no idea if an immediate ancestor was full-blooded Cherokee. Now she does say she had heard while growing up that her father's mother was kin to the tribe, but when asked, what do you mean kin to the tribe? She didn't know. But according to Herschel Walker, he just came up to her and told her this when she's not even making the claim. And he's been making claims of this sort for some time. Why he's choosing to do this bizarre Cherokee Hail Mary in the closing days of the campaign, I will not understand in the same way that I won't understand anything else about Herschel Walker. Jackson, what do you think?
Herschel is like literally the worst candidate in history. Like he literally doesn't know what's going on. Like he absolutely doesn't. And I just, as far as I know, the debate tomorrow isn't canceled, is it?
I haven't heard anything about it being canceled.
Yeah, I haven't either. And I can't miss it. I cannot miss it. I don't know where it's going to be streamed exactly, but I'm going to find out because that is going to be like, I mean, obviously Raphael's more prepared, but again, please just go after him. Just shake him up because it's not just that he's a bad candidate, but you know, like it is that he's a bad candidate. Shake him up.
I hope so. I mean, just let him talk. He always hurts himself.
Right.
The only issue is that Raphael Warnock is not a super aggressive guy. So I don't know how hard he's gonna go at him, but on some of these topics, I feel like you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And finally, I will remind you, by the way, Herschel Walker, that now that you've made those claims, you better watch out. Because any day now, Donald Trump's gonna come at you. After all, he told us that he could revive the Pocahontas slur at any time. That he gleefully threw at Elizabeth Warren. You're making these claims now. God only knows what he's going to say about you or not, because he doesn't actually care and nothing needs to make any sense. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this first hour of the Damage Report. Thank you everyone on the linear platforms or on the podcast. I'd love to have you here. If you are on the other platforms, not Twitch today, but YouTube or the members app, those sorts of things, we're gonna be diving into a lot of other news in the aftermath. So don't go anywhere. Jackson and I will be back in just a few. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.